Well, hello, everyone across the country. I'm Tim Phillips, president of Americans for Prosperity. Thank you for joining us for another of our Facebook conversations on some of the most important issues happening at the federal level in Washington, D.C. Boy, there are some real threats out there. We've been fighting those out on the road with Americans for Prosperity, trying to stop really all this top-down big spending that's driving inflation right now across our country, hurting so many Americans, especially middle class and those at the margins and on fixed incomes. We've got this Green New Deal threat, the socialized medicine threat, so many. We've been on the road. I'm in Indianapolis, Indiana today with our AFP, Americans for Prosperity, and Libre teams and Concerned Veterans teams rallying grassroots support to try to protect freedom and prosperity in this great country of ours. Today, we have a very special guest from the House of Representatives from the great state of Ohio. To introduce him as my friend and colleague on the Ohio team, Ezra Escudero. Ezra, take it away.
Thank you, Tim. Yes, it's my pleasure to serve on the Ohio team as Director of Coalitions. And we have such a great congressional delegation from our state. And one of the outstanding members is represents a part of the state that is so beautiful year-round, especially this time of year along the Ohio. And he enlisted in the Air Force in 1973, retired as a lieutenant colonel, is a graduate from Troy University in Alabama. And as I mentioned, we're happy to have him representing Ohio. Congressman Bill Johnson, welcome to our call today.
Well, thank you very much, Ezra. Good to be with you. And Tim, thanks for having me on today.
Yes, sir. Congressman, when you look at the threats coming out of Washington, D.C. right now, what's kind of keeping you up most at night? What's concerning you most for both the folks in your district and also our country?
We've got an economic crisis. The price of everything is going up, from groceries to the gas pump. That's going to continue because of several different reasons. One of the reasons, of course, is all of this out of control government spending that's coming out of the Biden administration. There's over $1 trillion that is sitting in the federal government that has already been appropriated by Congress, that has yet to make it out to the states. And yet this administration wants to spend another $5+ trillion on top of all of that. I mean, in our state, my county commissioners, my mayors, they're saying, stop sending us money. We can't spend all this money. It's just too much. And so this is, and you mentioned, Tim, the Green New Deal. Oh my God, what's happening to throttle and assault the fossil fuel industries of oil and gas and coal. This is not about carbon. It is not about a carbon-free society. It is about control. That's what the Democrats are up to. They want to control the lives of the American people. And then finally, which is something I think one of the key things you wanted to talk about today is how they want to weaponize the IRS to go after the American people and monitor their bank accounts, and under this bogus claim that they're trying to root out tax cheats. I don't buy it. I don't know that you are, but I don't think you guys are either, but I'm not buying it.
Yeah. Ezra, go ahead.
Sure. Well, Congressman Johnson, maybe you can tell me a little bit more about that. Earlier in my career, I worked as a financial advisor and worked for one of the large banks, national banks. And so with this crazy economy now, I recently sold a used car. It was, I sold it for more than $10,000. So I already knew from my previous banking experience that transaction was going to get reported to the IRS. $10,000 sounds like a lot of money, but when you're talking about a used car or things like that, it's almost an everyday quantity. But what's different now about the proposal that has come up from the administration just recently?
Well, we're talking about 80,000 new IRS agents to monitor the spending habits of the American people under the guise that it will make it easier for them to conduct audits. Well, why do we need the IRS in a large scale conducting that volume of audits on the American people? That is, in my view, a violation of the First Amendment rights of individual freedom and liberty that our founders put in place. That is not the role of the federal government. What Biden should be doing, he should be focusing on growing the economy and creating jobs, but he only seems to be focused on growing the IRS and weaponizing the IRS. This is a Gestapo kind of approach. I hate to say it that way, but this is part of the rush to socialism, where Big Brother and the government is inside the inner circle, monitoring your bank account. They know what you're buying, when you're buying it, where you're buying it. This is nuts. And I personally don't believe it's going to stand up to the scrutiny of the courts. But you know as well as I do, we've still got some work to do to de-radicalize the federal court system, but it'll take some time for it to move up. But I don't think it'll stand the test of legality.
Yeah, Congressman, it looks like what they're saying is, let's take that down. I think it's to $600. Is that right in the proposal at this point?
That's right. Well, they started with 600, and now we're hearing various stories that they're trying to, they're considering another number. I don't know what that number is. It really doesn't matter what the number is.
I agree.
Because whether it's $600 or $600 million, it really does not matter. In my view, it's government overreach. It's a violation of individual freedom and liberty, and it should not be tolerated. And let's go one step further. Ezra, my district, rural Appalachia. You watch that region. Do you know what this is going to do to community banks that are already stretched thin?
That's right.
To comply with federal regulations? I mean, community banks they don't have the deep pockets to be able to manage all of this, and I just don't see it.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen watching, this is such an important issue, and you can make your voice heard literally right now. Click that I volunteer link right there in the thread of this Facebook. It'll take only a couple of minutes, and make sure your House member and your 2 United States senators hear from you that you don't want the Internal Revenue Service rooting around in your private files, forcing your local bank to send in reports on your economic activity, potentially all the way down to $600. Let them hear now, because this legislation is being discussed right now. They need to hear from you, whether your member is very much on the left side, a liberal, and you think, oh, well, gosh, maybe I can't make a difference with them. They need to hear from you. Or whether it's a Republican or a conservative or folks who agree with you, they need to hear from you too, to let them know, hey, I've got your back. Keep fighting these terrible proposals. But it's an important moment for the country. We've had over 2 million actions, your fellow Americans doing exactly this, clicking that I volunteer link, making your voice heard. It'll take just a couple of minutes to do it. Please join us in this. It's a big moment. Ezra, go ahead. I just want to make sure folks know, as you're listening to Congressman Johnson and us, you can take action.
Oh, thank you very much, Tim. And this forum is so important because sunlight, they say, is a great disinfectant, right? And it helps to shine a light on these public proceedings, or proceedings that are supposed to be public. And Congressman, thank you for opening up and speaking to the people of your district, of the entire state, and anyone else logged in today to this call. Maybe you can help us understand, how open are the proponents of this radical proposal to intrude into all of our financial lives? How open are these proponents being in terms of openly debating and talking about the right approach? Are they sharing with you and with other folks who might object, or do we have a lot of closed door meetings going on?
That's an easy and short question. So I hope you've got some other questions to follow up, because the short answer to that is absolutely not. They are not being open. They are not being bipartisan in their approach here in the legislature. They are not being open to the public. All of this is being done behind closed doors. There has not been, I mean, I've been through energy and commerce, where I don't sit on financial services. I don't sit on ways and means. So I have not been involved in the IRS part of the debate. I have focused from my energy and commerce seat on the Green New Deal and the Clean Future Act and those kinds of things. Do you know how many Republican amendments the Democrats allowed in their markup for their part of this massive reconciliation package that includes all of this IRS stuff? You know how many Republican amendments they allowed?
How many?
Zero.
Wow.
Zero. There is no bipartisanship around this, none whatsoever. Take the infrastructure bill that everybody says is a bipartisan infrastructure package. Don't buy that either, because do you know how many legislative hearings we've had on the so-called bipartisan infrastructure bill? Zero. Do you know how many amendments have been allowed from the House Republicans? Zero. Look, this is a don't let a crisis go to waste philosophy that you heard from Rahm Emanuel years ago. That's what this is all about. Because when you look at what we did in 2017 with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and I think, Ezra, you were going to go here in a little bit about simplifying the tax code. You know, we made it simpler. Most Americans could file their taxes on a postcard size form, right? We did simplify the tax code, and it worked, and it helped to build the best economy that we had had in 50 years. The lowest taxes, the highest wages, the best quality of life, the strongest national security. We were energy dependent for the first time in 70 years. Let me give you an example. Do you know why President Trump was able to make the decision to move the embassy in Tel Aviv to Jerusalem? A measure that had been promised to our friend and ally Israel for years. And presidents from Ronald Reagan forward had basically punted that decision. Do you know why Donald Trump was able to make that decision and finally execute on that promise to our friends and allies in Israel? It's because we were, for once, in the first time in 70 years, we were energy independent. We were producing 13 million barrels of oil a day. And so he didn't have to worry about what OPEC or the Iranians or anybody else was going to do. We could fuel our own economy, and the American people would not be hurt by the negative actions of those countries that don't like us very much. Where are we today? We are south of 13 million barrels a day. We're 11 million barrels and declining. And we're now begging OPEC and Russia to increase production so that we can manage the price of gasoline at the pumps instead of doing it ourselves. So, I mean, it worked what we did in 2017. COVID hit, and now Biden is using that crisis to take more control and grow big government. It's wrong. And what's happening in the IRS is just part of that.
Yeah. You mentioned the tax reform of 2017. It was one of the most important accomplishments, frankly, in the last 20, 25 years, I believe, for our country. There's a lot of talk in this big social spending bill about jacking tax rates back up. I know they're keeping it behind closed doors, but Congressman, can you talk a little bit about that? It's not just that they want the IRS rummaging around in every transaction just about that individual Americans undertake, but they want to start pushing up corporate rates again, some individual rates. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing there on the tax front?
Sure. I can tell you that you know, in the military, I served for 27 years in the military. There's an element of military strategic planning called the element of surprise. How do you achieve the element of surprise in the military context? You convince your enemy that you're doing one thing when you're actually doing another. It's called deception. And that's what this is all about. Let's take a look at what these tax hikes really mean. When you start raising taxes on American job creators, on businesses, they're going to pass that along. They're going to pass that along in lower wages. They're going to pass that along in raising the price of their products. That means the American people are going to be paying more for everything that they need in their daily lives. That's going to occur. Inflation is going to continue to rise. Inflation is essentially a tax on every American, regardless of your income level. So there is so much wrong with this philosophy. It has always, and it is time tested and proven. When you let the American people keep more of their hard-earned money in their pockets, our economy flourishes. Our economy flourishes. It grows because people spend that money. They buy things, they start businesses, they invest their own money, they put it on the table and they risk their money to create a business and an opportunity. I mean, look at what happened with, you know, in Ohio, in our great state, the light bulb and the invention of the airplane. How many times did Thomas Edison come to the federal government and say, I need your help to fund me to invent and bring light to the world? He did not. He did it out of his own pocket. The Wright brothers, even though it was a different age, they developed the airplane, paid all of their trips back and forth from Dayton to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. They did it out of their own pocket. They didn't ask for a penny from the federal government. When the American people have the money to take risks, to innovate, that's where ingenuity is born. And that's what has grown the greatest economy on the planet and the most powerful economy on the planet. And that's why we are at the head of virtually every table in the global economy, from energy to finances to manufacturing, you name it. But we're under threat. We're under threat from the Chinese and the Russians, and the Biden administration seems to be playing right into their hands.
Congressman, I love the examples you illustrate with Thomas Edison and the Wright brothers. You know, in fact, the opposite is also true. When you look at one of the great rivals to Orville and Wilbur Wright, there was a gentleman named Samuel Langley, and he had the advantage of tremendous political connections, a lot of government support, and even it resulted in a different approach to his experiments, whereas the Wright brothers tested small, learned lessons, made improvements, and tested small again. Langley had the benefit of big bucks. He tested big, had spectacular failures. A lot of them are on those black and white film reels where you see planes crashing.
Oh, God, Ezra, I'm glad you brought that up. If you've never read the book, The Wright Brothers by David McCullum, oh my gosh, Langley, at the same time that the Wright brothers were doing the basics, studying birds to figure out how birds fly, Langley was killing people, dumping them into the river on a catapult, trying to throw an airplane into the air and hoping that it would take off. Absolutely, you are exactly right. We could talk for a long time about that experiment.
You know, and it's a perfect metaphor, right? Because right now we're seeing a time where folks in government officials, many of them even well-intentioned, are trying to say, we know better, we help you. If given a chance, Congressman, what things would you change and what reforms would you bring about using the recent tax reform as an example and so forth? What message can we share with Ohioans about things that we need to advocate for, not just stopping bad ideas now, but also proposing new ideas, better ideas for the future, for the next election, things like that?
Oh my gosh, that's a long list too. Let's start with the IRS. You know, I certainly would not be heading in this direction with the IRS. I would put the IRS in their place. I would eliminate the IRS. Why do you need the IRS? The American people pay their taxes. Why do you need the Internal Revenue Service to watch over their shoulders? I would significantly pare that back. I'm not saying that you don't have a government office that collects the taxes. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying you do not need the IRS inside the inner circle of the American people's finances. They've demonstrated that they cannot protect the privacy of individuals. We saw what happened under Lois Lerner when she was the head of the IRS and how they attacked conservative groups. We saw how they selectively leaked personal financial information about former President Trump. So we don't trust them. But on so many fronts, let's take border security. I would reinstate the policies of the previous administration because we had the most secure borders that we had in decades. Keep people in Mexico until their asylum dates come in. Let's eliminate this catch and release policy that's been started by the Biden administration, flying illegal immigrants in the dead of night to cities all over the United States and turning them loose. And let's go back to building the border wall. It works. It works. It keeps drugs out. It keeps crime out. It keeps the gangs out. It works. National security. I would go to the Taliban and to the thugs in Haiti, and I'd say, we're coming for our people. You either turn them loose and you make them available so we can pick them up, or you're going to pay a heavy price for it. You got 24 hours and we're on our way. And I would let the thugs know they don't knock the chip off of the shoulder of the American people. We're not going to do it that way. In terms of taxes, let the American people keep more of their hard-earned money. That's where innovation and ingenuity is born. And that's what has grown the most powerful nation on the planet. And let me just say this too. You know, our system is a system of government of, for, and by the people. We know that phrase is in our founding documents. Over generations, I'm included in it. The American people have gotten really comfortable with the for part. We elect a president, we elect 535 senators and members of the House of Representatives. We send them to Washington. We do the same thing in our state capitals. We send them there to do it for us. We have trusted elected officials to do it for us. We have forgotten the other two words, government of, for, and by the people. We have forgotten the of and the by part. The American people, what you're doing right now, Tim and Ezra, to inform the American people about what's going on. The American people cannot continue to be silent on the sidelines. They have got to step forward, whether it's the cancel culture pushing back, whether it's the Green New Deal and the skyrocketing costs of energy, whether it's government intrusion in our bank accounts through the IRS, whether it's raising our taxes. They've got to sound off. How do they do that? They do that at the voting booth. They need to sound off, and they need to let elected officials know that they're not going to sit on the sidelines any longer. This is truly government of, for, and by the people. And elected leaders need to understand that they have limited authority. This is not a big government country. This is power invested in the governed. That's what it's all about.
Well said, Congressman Bill Johnson from the great state of Ohio, with Ezra Escudero, one of our key grassroots leaders in Ohio. Ladies and gentlemen, we're coming down to the end of this battle. to try to stop this massive social spending bill. Even folks on the extreme left admit that now. It's not infrastructure. It's just a big new top down from Washington, D.C., almost socialism really coming out of D.C. You've got perhaps just a few days or at most a couple of weeks to make your voice heard. We would urge you to do that. Take a moment, click that I volunteer link, or call your member of the House and Senate, your 2 senators, your 1 House member directly. Let's make sure that in the years to come, when we look back at a perilous moment for our nation, that we can all say we did our part. We worked hard, we stood in the gap, and we protected freedom and prosperity and frankly, the American dream, the American way at a crucial moment. I'm Tim Phillips with Americans for Prosperity, out on the road with our grassroots activists. Thank you for joining us today.